Hello, and welcome back to Copilot Learning Hub. We dragged Pierre back onto the show because he taught us so many things about Azure Copilot in terms of how to do operations, how to get guided through operations, how to learn how to do operations when you've never done operations in your life, that we say, I bet there's more learning and upskilling things that Azure Copilot can do for us. So, Pierre, thank you so much for joining us again and coming to share your wisdom with our audience.
Well, thank you, Donna, for having me again. This is actually great because we're always learning. There's always more to learn, and there are so many services and so many possibilities in Azure that being an expert in all of them is almost impossible.
That is very true. So how can Azure Copilot help you with your learning and skilling journey? I'm so curious because it's a huge topic for everybody in our industry right now, right?
Well, not only is it a huge topic for industry, it's a feedback that we've gotten, at least that I've gotten from our audience, that we come up with these things so fast that sometimes it's hard for them to keep up. Like they're just learning containers, and now there's AKS, and then there's this, and then there's that. And like it keeps iterating at a pace where maybe they don't have the time in their environment because, of course, they have to keep the lights on and they have to operate their environment. So they may not have that amount of time in terms of learning experience. So they have to learn on like while they're doing it. So how can we help? How can Azure Copilot help?
I love it. So how can Azure Copilot help? This is a very exciting conversation.
Actually, if I look at my Copilot here, I sped up my first AKS cluster in demo/production online earlier this week. And I know nothing about AKS. So I can easily say, how many AKS clusters do I have? And of course, it'll go out and look just like we said in the last episode. It looks at the graph, the Azure graph, resource graph, and then it queries it and say, okay, so it'll count how many AKS clusters is it and give me the information. But really is, I don't know anything. Like I've set it up, but I'm running into issues. I'm running into load issues. I'm running into multiple things. So I can say, how do I scale an AKS cluster? And it'll go out and give me some information again, but it'll do more than that. It'll go into the Learn documentation and start providing me like step by step as to what can I do in order to scale an AKS cluster. And I'm a moron when it comes to AKS cluster. Normally, I defer to like Stephen or Paul or other guys in my team that are experts and are phenomenal at that. I've got other areas I need to concentrate on. But every once in a while, I need to do this.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Maybe it's for a demo. Maybe it's for a small project. So right now, as you can see, it's searching through our documentation and trying to determine what to do. And will eventually give me the steps I need to take. And right now, it's giving me a couple information. So to scale an AKS cluster, and I'm not going to read this for you, but it does give me an Azure CLI as to how can I increase the node count on my AKS cluster. But maybe I prefer PowerShell, so it also gives me the PowerShell command to do this. And then it says, okay, to learn more about this option, then it basically summarizes the documentation we have and gives me the 5 or 6 links that are the most pertinent to the question I just asked.
Okay.
So right now,
this is great because it gives you very specific docs pages to go to, not just the overall umbrella, not like learn.com/AKS, but it says, per your question, here are 5 actual resources to go to.
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
And it's not just about how can I operate the stuff I already have. So if I ask a questions like, What database service should I use to read heavy NoSQL workloads? And I'm not a data person.
Mhm.
I just don't know. What
Yeah.
service should I use? Should I use SQL, Postgres? I don't know. So I'll ask that question, and it'll go out in our documentation based on what we have, what we know. Give me suggestions. So right now it does tell me Azure Cosmos DB is distributed NoSQL database platform that's variously consistency options, blah, blah, blah. Gives me all the information I need and some links to understanding the NoSQL databases, which is great. So I can learn about it. I can go and read about it. But now if I want to deploy one, I'll just go out and say, well, show me how to deploy this. Because I may not have time to go out and learn and test and read all the documentation and the step-by-step. I just want to say, I need to set this up quickly. Maybe it's for a proof of concept. Regardless what the end result wants to be, like I just need to get this done now.
Right.
So it's generating CLI scripts, because I did specify in this case, and I mentioned in the last episode that context is king.
Mm-hmm.
If I had said using PowerShell, it would have generated the PowerShell commands. But in this case, I said CLI. And now it says, okay, so sure, here's a CLI commands to deploy Azure Cosmos DB and an app service, because they're dependent. It knows that. So say first, create the DB account. I can run it. I can copy it. Then create the service plan, create the web app, create the settings to include Cosmos DB connection string, configure the deployment source. But it also tells me in those scripts, there's a lot of variables. So please replace the variables with actual values you want to use.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can just run them, copy them elsewhere, modify those variables, run them, and deploy a Cosmos DB and app service in my environment, when 5 minutes ago I had no idea where to start with doing that.
I love that. It taught you how to do V1.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the magic things about these Copilot things, where if you're an expert, it helps you expert faster. But if you're a novice, it helps you get to V1 way faster than you now digging through 13 documentation files and trying to figure out where the resources in the Azure portal itself.
Yes.
Nice. Okay.
It's pretty phenomenal. It's pretty phenomenal. And it doesn't even have to be very specific to a technology. So I could ask it, help me design my cloud architecture. And I want to follow what I read about Azure security benchmarks, because security is a big thing. Security should be part of every project and every operation and everything we do.
Right.
So it goes out and it searches through our documentation for Azure security benchmark, and then it'll give me some information or links as to what I should read, how I should go about designing something that complies with our Azure security benchmark and so on.
No, and you're right. Security is everything. Pri 0, Pri 1, Pri 0 and Pri 1. Yep.
So here's when it's finished thinking, it says, oh, to design your cloud architecture following the security benchmark, you should adopt the security benchmark, the MCSB. It provides your guidance, again, gives you the further reading. So designing area for security, overview of security controls, introduction to cloud security benchmark. So I didn't ask it about anything very specific in terms of technologies.
Right.
I asked it, like, how do I address this? And it gives me more information. So it helps me learn things I didn't know I needed to learn.
That's right. Because it's that guided learning again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I love that.
But learning is not the only thing that is important. In the last episode, we talked about operations, alerts, monitoring. And this one, right, so far, we've talked about learning and upskilling. Because really, it is upskilling. Whatever level you're at, it helps you jump up.
Right.
So if you're a novice, it helps you get better. If you're an expert, it helps you get better, but just do it faster. But one of the things that we all have to be careful is FinOps, or operations in terms of cost operations.
Mm-hmm.
I have to admit, I have in the past, for a demo, like in front of a user group somewhere, and it's like, oh, so let me show you how I can deploy a VM with like 32 cores and 4 terabytes of memory, and let's make it a scale set of 10 of those, and like and show them how easy it was and how performance worked on those. And then the demo was over, so I closed the lid of my laptop. Thank you very much, and I left. Then at the end of the month, I got the bill.
Oh, no.
Yes.
No.
And of course, it wasn't in a Visual Studio subscription, demo subscription. It was an actual production subscription, so we had to pay the bill.
I'm going to call this episode, and then at the end of the month, I got the bill.
So one of the things we can do is, for example, in Azure Copilot, is say, how much am I spending on virtual machines in context, this particular subscription? Because really, this subscription is a demo subscription, and it's the only subscriptions where I, as Pierre Roman with my account, have got rights to actually see what the billing is.
Oh, that's right. I like that, because that is security, but also very helpful for you to know how much you're spending.
Yes.
Okay.
But as we mentioned in the last episode, Azure Copilot will only show you the information that you have access to based on governance, access control, and so on. So you don't have to worry about exposing information to people in your organization that may not have a need for it. So as long as your role-based access control are set properly, you're fine. So in this case, I can go and see, so in this particular subscription, I have spent $147 for virtual machines from May 1st to May 8th, which is today.
Yep.
So it gives me a list of my top 10, the percentage of the charge, and so on. So it basically just went out, got the info, and pumped it up for me. But I can say, for example, forecast my spend in the next 3 months.
Oh, hey, that's clever.
Yeah. So it uses historical data that's stored in your subscription.
Mm-hmm.
Looks at that information, extrapolate based on the usage that you've had, like the average usage if you had, and then will tell you that between May 1st and July 31st, I'm expected to spend $13,019.08 USD. Please note that this forecast did not include credits and taxes. If you have further questions, please let me know. So I could say, how do I reduce my cost? And it'll go out, look at my resources. Are there resources that are underutilized? Like, do I have a very large VM that's sitting at 5% usage?
Okay, so question, how accurate do you think this forecast is?
The forecast is a statistical analysis forecast. So it doesn't know whether or not tomorrow you're going to spend 10,000 machines.
Agreed.
Or spin up another complete new workload. So it's based on the information that you have currently.
Okay. So plus you need a bit of history, right, to do that forecasting thing.
Yes.
Because you're a consistent user. You're like, this is a thing I do every month. On occasion, you're going to do something strange, like leaving that resource running for 24 hours. And then at the end of the month, you got the bill. But in
I get
general,
the bill.
we kind of do the same thing every month over and over, unless there's some new random special project.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Plus, if you've got proper governance and policies,
Mm-hmm.
the people in your environment should not be able to spin machines that are too big, that are in the wrong region. Like your governance will help you contain that potential extra spend based on error, for example.
Right.
But also, it does gives you a list or a link to the advisor directly into Azure Copilot.
Right.
So it can look at that and say, oh, you can right size or shut down underutilized machine. And then, so not only will it give you, because you mentioned the forecast, like how accurate is it?
Yeah.
If you were going to forecast for your own business, you would look at all the costs that you've incurred in the last 6 months or 1 year. You'd put that in an Excel spreadsheet and you'd do some math magic to extrapolate what it's going to look like for the next 6 months or 3 months or whatever period you're looking at.
Yeah.
It's no different, except it does it for you.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I like that because if you were going to do a forecast, you need a set of data, and then Excel does a bunch of forecasting for you. Here, you're getting it in line, in context, without having to go to Excel and do it.
Exactly.
Okay, I love it. This is great.
The more context you put into your prompt, the more precise it's going to be. So forecast how much I'm going to spend on my Cosmos DB database for the next month. So based on the usage it's already had, based on the billing, past billing, we'll take all that information and use it. So
I love it.
All of the things you can do with Azure Copilot. And first of all, that's growing.
Yes.
Because we've already established that we have a ton of services and capabilities within Azure. And that's growing.
Yep.
So the LLM helps understand what your intent and what you're trying to do. Then it passes it on to a skill, or so alert and monitoring, financial information, resource graph query. Those skills are growing because all of the product groups that are running Azure Backup or resiliency or observability or any of added services that we're adding, they're currently, because we're still in preview, they're currently finalizing the skill that's needed to operate that particular product.
I love it. Yeah.
And that's being fed into Azure Copilot.
I really like just how every time I use this product, I learn a bunch of new things. And I see the product change week over week. I see it being able to generate me new things, guide me through a new flow. The other day, I was trying to make this AI assistant, and it actually guided me to not just the place in Azure Portal, the Azure AI Studio, but it also guided me to a set of docs to use to build using prompt flow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't have the skill, or if the intent that you're telling it, it doesn't know how to interpret,
that's right,
then it'll default to a RAG model that basically covers all of our documentation and present you with what's most likely to be what you're looking for.
Right. I like that it falls back. It says like, hey, I don't have that information in context of the Azure portal, but we do have it in documentation. And that orchestration, I think, is really clever. I think it's very helpful. Awesome. Thank you so much, Pierre, for coming and sharing all of these insights about Azure Copilot that I personally did not know, and I know many of our audience members also did not know. So we really appreciate your expertise, and we can't wait to see Azure Copilot exit preview and hit GA where it belongs.
Should be soon.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned next time for Copilot Learning Hub. Thank you.